All right, guys, I am going live to you since with our Health Knox series, our last one of the month. And all this month, we've been focusing on mental health and how that applies to your physical health. Now, if you're watching live or even in the replay, go ahead, let me know that you're there. Leave a comment, say hi. And if you're not from the West Knoxville, Tennessee area, just go ahead and put where you're watching from. But today's Health Knox series is stress reduction, strategies and solution for an overwhelmed mind. So I am actually navigating here from a new platform. So please give me a little bit of leeway here as I kind of navigate that. I want to access my screen. Okay, here we are. So let's go ahead and exit that. So I'm Dr. Trent Hibbard with Restoration Chiropractic here in West Knoxville. I'm a corrective care chiropractor. And if you don't know me, welcome. And welcome to our group. If you're new to our group or just join our group in Your Extraordinary Life, West Knoxville. And our whole drive and goal is to make West Knoxville the healthiest community in Tennessee. And so I'm just going to jump right into our Health Knox series today, stress reduction strategies and solutions to help you with an overwhelmed mind. So first off, we need to understand that let me recap that. Not meeting your genetic requirement. Remember, a genetic requirement is a need. If we don't meet that through mental, emotional, physical, chemical, nutritional, so movement, nutrition, sleep, all these requirements that your body is expecting, then it creates a stress. And whenever there's a stress, there's two categories that it creates for the body, or a downward stream effect, if you will. It creates a deficiency or toxicity or both. So now that we have that kind of out of the way, because I've been talking about these things all month long about it's your lifestyle and your environment, that if you're not meeting that need and that requirement, it's creating stress, aka a deficiency or toxicity for your body, leading it down the path of not expressing full health like you were designed. So what's interesting is there's studies that show chronic stress physiology leads to a change in the cells at the brain level where it's called the hippocampus, where learning and memory actually take place. And that's important to know about chronic stress physiology, right? So chronic stress physiology is basically the physiology that is the fight or flight response. Now, you probably heard that one way or another, but this fight or flight response is like you seeing a grizzly bear in front of you. And so it creates a physiological effect and change with your body. Sorry, I'm just kind of playing with something here, so give me 1 second. There we go. So stress physiology is like if you had that grizzly bear that was in front of you and it's created higher heart rate, sweaty palms, shallow erratic breathing, those sorts of things. And this stress physiology happens to come from our lifestyle stress that is creating a chronic, if you will, stress response. Now, I use the analogy as dry sponge analogy. Imagine a dry sponge sitting underneath a leaky faucet, and it's not a big deal in the beginning, but over time, that sponge becomes oversaturated and overstressed and no longer can adapt in a healthy expression like it was designed to. So this is what you need to know with and how this ties into your mental emotional health, right? So when we're chronically stressed, it actually affects the parts of the brain that actually deal with learning and memory. So this is where we can see, you know, not just the older generation with Alzheimer's and dementia, but we can see this with behavioral and cognitive other issues that plague kids and other young adults. Now, On the flip side of that, research does show that chronic movement stimulation and exercise. So again, when we move, because it's a requirement and it's an expected nutrient that the body is, again, expectant or relying on for you to provide, it creates a stimulation that actually increases those cells. So it helps you with your retaining your memory center and also helps you with learning. And so not only is this just with movement and exercise in general, but also if you're part of our office and under corrective care, this applies to the structure of the spine. When the structure of the spine, because remember, the structure of the spine protects this communication pathway that's directly and indirectly communicating with your brain and telling your brain about your internal and external environment. So if that spine's not moving correctly, then we have signals that eventually become chronically stressed and inflamed. Now, the two biggest factors today that lead to chronic illness and disease come down to chronic stress physiology and insulin resistance, and they can be tied together because they are correlated because they affect one another. Now, this is the part of the brain that I wanted to show you, the prefrontal cortex. But what's interesting about that is this, that what we think about, what you tell yourself, your attitudes, your thoughts, they influence your physiology. And here, when we take a look at the prefrontal cortex of the brain, we can actually, what's interesting, you can actually inhibit this center. So you can inhibit the stress response, the thing that I just talked about, by releasing a neurotransmitter called GABA. And what that does at the amygdala site, remember the amygdala site is going to be the site for anxiety and worry. And so that site becomes hyperactive when we're in a stress response or state, chronically or acute. Now, how you can override that is just by a positive, so the response to a positive thought, which elicits a positive emotion, you actually can override that hyperactive anxiety and stressful area. Now, I'll say that again, because this is pretty important, that when we have a positive thought and emotion, and we can direct ourselves to this positive thought and emotion. And remember, go back to my video last week on how the mind works, 3 parts. You literally can redirect your focus and put up onto the screen, if you will, the keyboard of the computer system of your brain and your mind, what you want it to focus on. But the thing is, you have to get to the underlying program systems that have been developed from behaviorally learned situations and events that you've been through, whether they were healthy or unhealthy, of how you actually perceive things. So it doesn't just start with, having a positive thought and then everything else is good for you and the rest of your life. And that does have some counter effects and merit, but it's not the underlying root to the problem that most people are having. How do we change these patterns, these belief systems? And so that was last week's videos. Go back and watch that. But expanding upon that, when we have a positive thought or a positive perspective, it elicits a positive emotion, and it physiologically has a response where it shunts focus, energy, nerve supply to this part of the brain. So it inhibits the blood supply to the other part. Now, there's a saying in physiology that the nerves that fire together wire together. So the more that you repeatedly fire these parts of the brain for positive emotions, from positive thoughts, you are rewiring the system to be faster and easier for you to go down that pathway. And the same would be true for the opposite. If we continually think about negative thoughts and have negative emotions and allow ourselves to kind of experience those negative emotions, they create negative thoughts. And you can kind of see how these play inversely and how they play back and forth with each other. So if you have an emotion, it affects the thought, but you actually can drive the thought to the emotion as well. All that to be said, nerves that fire together wire together, and our choice of thoughts and attitudes significantly influence our state of physiology. So I really wanted to go over that because I think that's such a huge thing. Now, the prefrontal cortex deals with your cognitive behavior, your personality, decision-making skills, and of course, your social behavior. Now, let's talk about get to the strategy section here. All right, so we're going to start covering some of these strategies that you can start doing today to help you with your mental emotional health, because that affects your physical health and they're tied together. You cannot separate them. Now, before I go there, I want to ask you, what do you think? Is there any drug or surgery that can actually change and correct the lifestyle deficiency or toxicity that's being created from that lifestyle? And if you're watching this live or in the replay, go ahead, put your answer below. Do you think a drug or surgery can actually reverse the effects from what a toxic and deficient lifestyle is creating physiologically? And if you answered if you answered no, it can't, then you're absolutely right. And I'm not trying to say that I'm anti-drug and I'm not trying to say that I'm not anti-drug or anti-surgery, because those things have a place. They have a situation for trauma, crisis care situation. But outside of that, the 99% of the time is actually from lifestyle and the choices that you make on a regular basis. And so with that to be said, let's kind of go into some of these strategies that are going to be super helpful for you to start implementing today, that are going to be helpful for you to start not only helping shape the health of your mind, but also the health of your physiology, the health of you and your family overall. So let's take a look. So exercise movement daily. So our Move by Design webinar is a great place to start. It goes through those details. If you're in our group, go, please, I ask you to participate, number one, part of this group, but also interact. Go to your guide section. That's where all your resources are. They're free. They're downloadable PDFs, access to tickets to our webinar. So all these that I'm going to talk to you about, I go more in depth on a webinar, and you can check that out. If you're more of a go-getter and want to kind of start one step at a time and start piecing things together, go check out the guide section. I have each of the guides under Move by Design, Eat by Design, Power by Design, and Think by Design. So exercise, movement, and daily. There's more than one requirement and ways to get movement. If you're not part of an exercise program or routine, and it doesn't matter what it is, because I want you to do something that meets the requirement, that's enjoyable for you, and that you're going to do it long term. So that's where movement daily is going to be helpful to kind of down-regulate the stress and anxiety center of your brain and elicit the stress reduction pathway through that means. Now, also by nutrition, Eat by Design, we talk about strategies that are most based off of evidence and research today that drive down inflammation and reduce toxicity for the human body, for the human physiology. And so we talk about those strategies in detail in that webinar, and also the guide section there's a grocery shopping list, there's details on things that you should be doing. And typically I like to focus on how to implement and put into your diet the things that you need versus, hey, you need to cut all this out. So if we add my philosophy is if you add in things that are necessary and requirements for you, eventually the bad stuff starts to move itself out. But you do have to be aware of those choices as well. And what I mean by bad stuff, I mean it's unhealthy, meaning it's not as nutrient dense and as meeting a requirement for you. When you start to move away from that spectrum from nutrient dense and healthy, you're moving further away from by design concepts. All right, spinal care and spinal hygiene exercises. You don't have to be part of the office to start implementing these today, because I have the PDF and I have the video demonstration here in the group in the guide section of how to do that. And along with the exercise as well, Move by Design, I even have PDFs where I have a build your own template workout. I show you how to do that if you're a go-getter and want to do that on your own and you're experienced exercise enthusiast. But spinal care and hygiene, this is where corrective care comes into play, that the component that when there's shifts in the structure of your spine, those are things that cannot be out-exercised, out-yogaed, out-nutritioned. And those are all great things that you should be doing. But when you actually have a shift in the structure of the spine, that's when you need professional care. And that's where a corrective care office like ours comes into play and helps you with that. Now, identifying your innate values, Think by Design. This is, again, going along with what I've been talking about all month that I just put up in the group. I think these PDFs for you to access, identifying your innate values. So it's going to talk about those things more specifically, self-talk, affirmation, and I'm going to talk about some of the other ones. So let's kind of jump into that. So identifying your native values and self-affirmation and exercise, or sorry, self-affirmation exercise. These are PDFs that I put up into the group in the guide section, so go ahead and talk about those. But I want to talk more importantly about a couple of things because I think they're really worthwhile to really talk to you about. One is diaphragmatic breathing. So breathing from your belly and not your chest. And the majority of people, because they're stressed and inflamed, but more importantly, stuck on the stress response or the fight or flight response, they can't help this because it's their body's response to being stressed. And so what happens is you start to breathe more shallow and erratic. And so it's pulling blood away from the internal organs and more so towards the external organs, such as your extremities and your legs. And so we're getting blood supply away from the lungs, and the diaphragm sits right underneath I don't know if you can see my cursor here or not, but right underneath here is the lungs was a muscle called the diaphragm. And so when you become stressed or in a stress or fight or flight response, that doesn't work as well. It's becoming more stressed in the way that it's as a muscle, it can't lengthen and contract as well as if it was in a relaxed state. Because of that, you're breathing more from the upper chest and not from the belly. But the good news is you can actually override this, just like you can override stress and anxiety levels of your mind by elicit from a positive thought, eliciting a positive emotion. You can actually start breathing and it'll actually shift you from stress response to more towards a brake pedal system or rest and digest called the parasympathetic system. So with that to be said, this is free and you can do this anywhere. And so how you would do this, and I would coach you on this, is this, that you breathe through the nose deeply into your belly for 1 to 2, 3 seconds. So 1, 2, 3, take a breath in, hold that for like a 3 to 7 count, and then slowly exhale through your mouth, 1, 2, 3, as you're counting in your head. And that would be diaphragmatic breathing. And you want to do that a couple times, and over 2 to 3 times, when you do that, you'll start to feel your body become more relaxed, and it's starting to shift you more into this parasympathetic system. So again, something that's not utilized and it's free, and you can do it anywhere, at any time. So I definitely encourage you to do that. Now, meditation or mind quieting, I have a PDF that I have in the group again as well. And I keep repeating this because I have a lot of resources for you there to start implementing these things. You don't have to set 20 minutes aside like it says here, but you could be 5 minutes, or it can be as long or as short as you have available. But this is super helpful. Again, it's getting you to be more psychologically fit, getting you to train your mind to be focused more on what you want it to instead of being reactive. And so this is something that you can start practicing and doing, and gives you kind of the outline of how to make that most successful for you. Now, light and sound training, what's interesting about this is you can actually change the brain frequencies of the frequencies of the brain. There's actually 4 of them. You see here, beta, alpha, theta. Now, delta is what most people would understand is they're at deep sleep, right? And so what I'm going to talk mainly about is the other 3. Now, beta is more of our reactionatory, if you will. We're being more reactive. So we're just responding to what's in front of us. So this is where most people are stuck, because when they're in a fight or flight response, they are stuck in high beta wave brainwave frequency. And you can see here, this is where the stress and anxiety, the normal state of alertness can be. But most people are staying let me take a deep breath here. Most people are staying stuck here because of the stress response and the anxiety that they have from whether they're mental, emotionally thinking about it, or they're physically stressed, or both. Now, what we want to do is have the brain be flexible, where it can go into the normal state of alertness, but also come out of that for alpha and theta waves throughout the day. Now, as you see here, alpha and theta waves are the brain waves where most of the relaxation, meditation, prayer, memory, focus, all the healing and the brake pedal system or parasympathetic system is where it lies, and where the brain most does its best work actively at those wavelengths. And so how do we actually tap into that? So light and sound, if you're curious and new to this, is whenever you go to like a concert, it's a rock concert, it's high. It's going to be putting most people into this alert state, stress and anxiety. And then if you have like a strobe light, that's going to be there as well. What's interesting, as you see here, and I don't know if I can zoom in. Let's see if I can do that. There you go. That this headset and device, you can actually download this app. It's free. It's called BrainTap Pro, and you can get access to 600 different sessions on different topics that are relatable for you and your health, or just what you want to really focus on. And so you get LED lights in this headset and the visor and the ears. You close your eyes, you listen to a guided meditation that would sync with the light and the sound into these frequencies. So it's going to start you out here in the alert state beta, and then bring you down into the alpha and theta waves, where it'll relax your body. It'll help you to, again, be more relaxed and for more conducive for healing. But more importantly, when I talked about the last Health Knox series last week about the mind and how it works, how do we get to the belief systems and rewrite those programs that we've been conditioned to from behavioral situations and events that shaped our mind and how we perceive our life? You can actually rewrite those programs when you get into alpha and theta waves. And so this is exactly what this technology does. And I have a couple of these, ones here in the office and ones at home. And I definitely encourage you to check that out. That's a huge thing. Now, the other thing I want to go over is your body can actually have trapped emotions. So emotionally, your emotions can get trapped physically in the body. Now, this isn't for everybody, but for those who are interested, there's a great book called The Emotion Code by Dr. Bradley Nelson, and it's about energy work and quantum mechanics. So everything, basically the premise is everything emits an energy field or vibrational field. And even here in the office in chiropractic, we actually work with the nervous system and the brain, and it actually gives off a certain frequency or vibrational field, if you will. And when the spine and the nervous system is not operating the way it was designed, and there's an obstruction to it, we actually see this vibrational field or frequency start to be out of balance, if you will. And for some people, it's hyperactive, it's too high or too low, but most of the time it's not working the way it's supposed to in general. If you check out electrophotography, it's been around since I think the 50s. And so what they did is they put electrodes into organic and inorganic objects and showed you that everything has an energy field or emits energy or vibration or some type of energy that comes off it. So you can kind of see that with some of these pictures here. You're no different with your body. You actually emit a lot of that. And so how do I make this sensible for you guys? Is this that imagine somebody who walks into a room who's you're watching a presentation, and then somebody comes to the room late and they're very negative, and maybe they're loud and they have a bad attitude. That changes the room, right? Versus if you have somebody who comes in as a presenter and they're high energy, they're super positive, it motivates you. This is based off of that energy field is there. Electricity has an energy, but you don't see it. You can sometimes feel it. And if you feel it, you're probably going to be hurt. But I wanted to show you this picture here to the left. This is actually a human finger. And just look at the energy field that comes off of the human body. So this is a really great, if it's for you, technique and strategy to check out. The book itself explains how you can actually walk through, assess. You can either do this yourself or hire a practitioner who's experienced with this. But the book gives you this chart as well. And I'll show you as I zoom in, this chart goes over, there's like, I think 60 different emotions. And it shows you can find out what specific part of the body here on the left side is actually has that trapped emotion. And then you can figure out what that trapped emotion is. And then it teaches you how to release that through muscle testing. Now, what's interesting is when you release trapped emotions, it helps, at least reportedly, a sudden disappearance of sometimes physical problems, self-sabotage, and reoccurring relationship difficulties. But really, at the end of the day, it's helping you to take the stress load off of that dry sponge that I talked about in previous conversations under a leaky faucet, to wring it out, to make it more adaptable, and to help you to respond to your environment in a more conducive and healthy by design way. All right, so I'm wrapping up here. If you guys have any questions, please leave them below, whether it's in the live or the replay. And I thank you again for being patient with me, as technology can be kind of funny. And just remember, I'll be doing these Health Knox series next month. I think next month our topic is going to be all about, it's going to be all about Eat by Design and strategies and ways to kind of look at fuel for the body to drive down inflammation, reduce your toxicity. So I'll be doing lives on that. And remember, when it comes to your health, you're worth it. Make it a great day.